The ship emerged from the tier in space, with the grace of a blade sliding between ribs. Imperial Expeditionary Fleet Commander. Vextal watched the data streams cascade across her command throne, each line of code confirming what her sensors had already told her. The system ahead was primitive, underdeveloped, fractured. Perfect. Report, she said. Her tactical officer, a scarred veteran of 17 planetary subjugations, turned his crest toward her. 73 confirmed worlds withstanding populations. Only one possesses what we would consider a developed technological base. The others are. He paused, consulting his display. Disappointing. Vextal allowed herself a fraction of a smile. The Empire had encountered disappointing before. Disappointing meant resistance that lasted 3 days instead of 2. Disappointing meant orbital bombardment that required only 5 cruisers instead of 7. The primary world. Designation Earth. Population approximately 9 billion. Technologically primitive by Imperial standards. They possess fission-based weapons, limited spaceflight capability, and no unified global government. They are divided into approximately 200 independent political entities, many of which are currently in conflict with each other. Vextal's crest flattened in confusion. They fight each other while possessing planetary weapons. Correct. She turned this information over in her mind. A species that had developed the capacity to destroy its own biosphere, and then continued to manufacture such weapons in quantity. A species that had not achieved unity, despite sharing a single world. Species that had reached the stars in fragile primitive vessels and then turned back to fight over dirt. Send the address, she ordered. Standard subjugation protocol. We will give them 1 rotation to accept Imperial sovereignty. After that, she gestured with one clawed hand. We demonstrate mercy through controlled force. The standard address was simple, elegant. It had worked on 734 worlds across 14 galactic sectors. The Empire would arrive, display its technological superiority, deliver its ultimatum, and watch the natives fall over themselves to submit. Within hours, the transmission had been broadcast. Within minutes, the response arrived. Vextal stared at the reply on her display. It was not a formal surrender. It was not a desperate plea for mercy. It was not even a declaration of war. It was, as near as her translation matrix could determine, a series of images depicting a small domesticated creature with a confused expression, accompanied by text that read, "Did you just threaten us with a stick? Because that's what this looks like. That's what this feels like." She looked at her tactical officer. He looked back at her. "What," she said slowly, "is a meme." The next 48 hours were spent in what Vextal would later describe in her official report as diplomatic confusion. The humans did not retreat. They did not fortify. They did not begin frantic military mobilization. They argued with each other. Her intelligence specialists intercepted thousands of civilian communications. They were not discussing imperial invasion. They were not discussing survival strategies. They were whether the Empire ships looked more like space whales or space swords, and whether this meant the Empire was space whale people or space sword people. One particularly heated debate involved a human concept called copyright infringement, which appeared to be related to the possibility that the Empire ship design was ripped off from a video game. Their diplomat, her communications officer reported, has asked if we have a website. A website. A digital location for the dissemination of information. They say it would be easier to negotiate if they could see our terms of service. Vextel's claws scraped against the armrest of her throne. We are the Galactic Empire. We have conquered 700 worlds. We possess weapons that can fracture planets, and they want to know our terms of service. Apparently, they are concerned about hidden fees. She closed her eyes for the first time. In her career, she felt something she could not identify. It would take her 2 rotations to realize it was the first stirring of doubt. The human diplomat arrived via a primitive shuttle that had been modified with Imperial docking technology. She was tall for her species, which was still short by Imperial standards, and wore a garment that appeared to be woven from plant fibers. Her name was Amara Chen Liu. Vextel would remember her for the rest of her life. Thank you for having me, Amara said, settling into a chair designed for beings twice her size. I understand you want to conquer us. Vextel's crest tightened. That is a simplified interpretation of our proposal. Proposal? Amara nodded slowly. Right. I've read your terms. You want our resources, our industry, and our population. In exchange, we get the privilege of paying you tribute and following your laws. That's conquest. We call it integration. Integration. Amara pulled out a small device. Can I record this for my report? You may. Good, so let's talk about integration. What happens to our internal conflicts? Vextel blinked. Your what? Our wars. We've got quite a few going on right now. Do we have to stop them? Because some of our leadership is very committed to the fighting. I mean, we've been doing it for tens of thousands of years. The Empire will enforce peace, Vextel said automatically. All conflicts cease under Imperial sovereignty. That's very kind of you, but some of our people really enjoy fighting. It's a kind of our thing. Amara leaned forward. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a species refuse to surrender because they were having too much fun fighting? Vextel stared at her. The answer is no, Amara continued, and that's the thing about our species. Commander, we don't really do what's expected. We do what's interesting, and right now you're interesting. Interesting, Vextel repeated. Interesting enough that we're going to see how this plays out. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to negotiate. We're going to wait and see what you do next, and then we'll decide how to respond. Amara stood. Thank you for your time. I'll show myself out. She stopped at the door and turned. One more thing, if you're planning to bomb us from orbit, I should warn you. We've been preparing for that for about 60 years. Our movies are full of instructions on what to do. We're very ready. The door slid shut behind her. Vextel sat in silence for a long moment. Then she opened a channel to her tactical officer. Prepare the fleet for orbital deployment. We will demonstrate the cost of resistance. She expected fear. She expected trembling. She expected the humans to finally understand what they faced. Instead, as her ship took position above Earth, she received a single transmission from the planetary surface. It was music, aggressive pounding, rhythmic music with lyrics she could barely understand. What she could understand made her blood chill. In the distance behind the music, she could hear shouting, thousands of voices, millions. Her translator struggled with the words, but it managed to translate the chant that echoed across Earth's communication networks. We are going to like this war. The Imperial fleet hung above Earth like a necklace of dark jewels. Vextal had ordered a blockade formation designed to inspire maximum psychological pressure. Every Imperial textbook stated that orbital superiority, combined with overwhelming firepower, would crack any world's resistance within hours. The humans should be panicking, they should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were hosting a festival. Her intelligence monitors showed crowds gathering in every major population center. They were not running or hiding. They were dancing, they were waving banners. They had set up something called food trucks and were selling items with names that are translation matrix rendered as tacos and pizza and something called fried dough. The shouting she had heard earlier had resolved into organized rhythmic chanting, but it wasn't battle cries. It was Commander, her sensor officer, reported. The humans appear to be singing. Multiple coordinated groups across multiple continents. They appear to be communicating through song. Some of the lyrics appear to be crude. Vextal brought up the audio feed. Chorus of human voices washed over her. Command bridge. We don't need your empire, they sang. We've got our own problems. Your ships are pretty, but we think your mama made them. Her translator struggled. Pretty was a compliment, but mama was. She wasn't sure what mama was. It was the primary caregiver and made them. Implied construction. She parsed the lyric again. The humans were insulting the construction methods of her species. Primary caregivers. This was the most incompetent propaganda campaign she had ever encountered. Deploy the PSYWAR division, she ordered. We will show them what real fear looks like. The PSYWAR division was the Empire's most sophisticated weapon. It didn't destroy bodies, it destroyed minds through targeted broadcast of psychological stimuli. It could induce terror, despair, and mass surrender without firing a single shot. The humans should have collapsed in fear within minutes. Instead, they started remixing the broadcasts. I don't understand, her PSYWR officer said. We are projecting images of planetary destruction. We are broadcasting their leaders' simulated deaths. We are overwhelming their senses with panic-inducing frequencies. And they are using our broadcast to create entertainment. V812 Al stared at the display. One human had taken the footage of a simulated orbital bombardment and set it to upbeat music. Another had edited her own face into the destruction footage, adding comedic expressions of surprise. A third had created something called a meme that depicted the Empire ships as Space RUMBAS and was now circulating it across all of Earth's communication networks. This is not fear, V812 Al whispered. This is mockery. It gets worse, her tactical officer said. Several of Earth's political entities have officially acknowledged our presence. They have issued official statements. Read them. He cleared his throat. The United States of America acknowledges the extraterrestrial presence. However, due to a current government shutdown, no official response can be formulated at this time. We suggest the aliens contact us after the budget passes. That's not a response, that's bureaucracy. That's the point. The Chinese government states that this is an internal Earth matter and requests that all extraterrestrial visitors respect territorial sovereignty. The Russian Federation has offered to lease the aliens part of Siberia for a moderate fee. The European Union is in emergency session to determine whether the aliens constitute a trade violation. V-812 Al crest flattened against her skull. They're not taking us seriously. No, Commander, they appear to be taking us exactly as seriously as they take themselves, which is to say, not very seriously at all. She opened a channel to the human diplomat. Amarakarnaryu, we demand to speak with your global leadership. There was a pause, then which one? To the highest-ranking human leader. Commander, we don't have one. We tried. That it didn't work out. We have about 200 different leaders, and most of them disagree with each other about everything. Then we will speak with all of them. Okay, hold on. Let me put you on conference call. The next 3 hours were the worst of VEX. TAL career. She listened to humans argue with each other about everything from planetary defense budgets to whether the Empire's representatives had a weird smell. She watched them reference something called Robert's Rules of Order and engage in a 30-minute debate about the proper way to address a foreign power. At one point, one of the human leaders began discussing the Empire's ships in terms that suggested a great investment opportunity. VEX TAL closed the channel. We will not reason with them, she said. We will demonstrate, deploy the strike force, target the largest population center, show them the cost of mockery. The strike force launched 18 ships, descended through Earth's atmosphere, targeting the city designated as New York. And then something happened that should have been impossible. The Human Defense Network didn't attempt to shoot the strike force down. Instead, it began broadcasting a specific set of communications to the approaching ships. Commander, her communications officer, said the humans are demanding that our ships comply with air traffic control regulations. What? I quote, your vessel is operating without proper clearance. Please contact air traffic control immediately or face fines. The strike force leader responded, we are here to destroy you. The human response, that's not how this works. You need to file a flight plan. You need to maintain altitude. You need to prove you can pay damages if you hit something. The strike force continued descending. VEX TAL watched her display, waiting for the first explosions, the first fires, the first signs of human panic. Instead, a single human vessel, primitive aircraft barely capable of atmospheric flight, intercepted the lead Imperial ship. It did not fire weapons. It did not transmit threats. It flew directly in front of the Imperial vessel, forcing it to alter course. Commander, the strike force leader reported, there is a small aircraft blocking our path. It appears to be piloted by a civilian. Destroy it. We can't. It's directly between us and the city. If we fire on it, we risk destroying the city we're meant to demonstrate against. Then fire around it. Commander, the city is behind the aircraft. There's no angle. VEX TAL stared at her display. A single human piloting a primitive Machine had placed themselves between an Imperial strike force and its target. We can't risk the civilian, the strike force leader said. It would be a massacre. We would be killing helpless non-combatants. The city is full of helpless non-combatants. Yes, but they're not directly in our path. This one is. It's almost as if they knew exactly where we were going and positioned themselves to block us. VXQTALQUES claws dug into her armrest. They knew, she whispered, they knew. We would aim for the population center. They knew we would hesitate to fire on a civilian. They knew we would stop. And then she realized the full scope of human tactics. They weren't fighting her with weapons. They were fighting her with rules. Bureaucratic rules, legal rules, rules, ethical rules. Rules that the Empire had never encountered because no one had ever been audacious enough to use them. Commander, her tactical officer said. There's more. The human is refusing to leave. Contact the civilian. Tell them to depart. The channel opened to the human pilot. You are obstructing a military operation. Depart immediately or face consequences. The human voice that responded was female, calm, almost bored. Are you going to shoot me? Because that would be a war crime. I've got civilian markings. I'm clearly unarmed, and I'm recording everything you say and do. This is not a war crime. This is standard procedure. Standard procedure requires you to give a warning and a chance to evacuate. You did that. We're not evacuating, so either you shoot a civilian and prove to the whole galaxy that you're monsters, or you back off and find another target. VXQTAL closed her eyes. Pull the strike force back. Commander, we cannot fire on a civilian. We cannot break our own protocols. We must find another way. As the strike force retreated, VXQTAL watched the human pilot execute victory roll, a barrel roll maneuver. That was clearly celebratory. And then, across every communication channel, the humans broadcast a single message. We don't need to beat you. We just need to make you choose not to fight. Via Exotle quotes, tactical officer turned to her. Commander, we need a new approach. There are no other approaches. Protocols are clear. We have to. Commander, we just spent 3 hours being defeated by a species using memes, administrative law, and a civilian aircraft. We cannot defeat them through protocol. We need to try something else. Via Exotle nodded slowly. Then we learn about them, all of it. Their history, their culture, their psychology. I need to know who they are and what they fear. Her intelligence officer stepped forward. Commander, we have been analyzing their historical records. There's something you need to see. What is it? Commander, they have a concept called the underdog. It means the weaker party in any conflict. And here's the thing. In all their stories, every single time. Every time what? The underdog wins. The briefing room was silent. Via Exotle had assembled her senior officers, her intelligence division, and every available tactical specialist in the fleet. The data on the central display showed Earth's military capabilities, its defense networks, and its planetary defenses. Commander, her tactical officer said, we must consider the possibility that direct military confrontation is inadvisable. Explain. The humans have no unified military. Their forces are divided among nations. each with their own command structure, protocols, and weaponry. This should be a disadvantage in conventional warfare. Division means vulnerability. Vextal gestured with a claw, and yet we have been analyzing their historical conflicts. Commander, these people have been fighting war for tens of thousands of years. They have written more about warfare than any other species in the galaxy. They have multiple branches of philosophy dedicated solely to the study of killing. He brought up a timeline on the display. Allow me to illustrate. In the human year 1945, one of their nations used fission weapons against another. The weapon was crude by our standards, but it was effective. Within 2 years, multiple nations possessed similar weapons. Within 20 years, they had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet many times over. That's a common escalation pattern. Vextal said, "We've seen it before." "You misunderstand, Commander. They developed world-ending weapons, and then they didn't use them. They pointed them at each other, established protocols to prevent accidental use, and then continued fighting conventional wars. They were simultaneously capable of global annihilation and regular conflict." Your point? My point is that human warfare is not about winning, it's about surviving. They don't fight to destroy, they fight to endure. They have refined endurance into an art form. Vextal studied the timeline. The human conflicts were endless: wars, revolutions, civil conflicts, border disputes, philosophical arguments turned violent. They had fought over resources, religion, ideology, and the simplest of misunderstandings. And through it all, they had survived. Commander, her intelligence officer, said, "We captured a human military asset, a soldier. He was attempting to gain intelligence on our fleet composition. We have him in containment. Bring him to me." The human was smaller than the average Imperial. His features were pale, his hair dark, and his expression unreadable. He wore a battered uniform with patches and pins that meant nothing to Vextal. "You are my prisoner," she said. The human nodded. "Seems that way. Your species is threatened with annihilation. Your world is under blockade. Your government is fractured. And yet you attempted to gather intelligence on us. Why?" The human shrugged. "Because you're here." "That is not an answer. It's the only answer. You're here. You're threatening us, so we're going to fight. That's what we do. We fight things that threaten us. But you cannot win." The human smiled. It was an expression that Vextal did not understand. It was not triumph, it was not fear, it was something else entirely. "We don't need to win," he said. "We just need to make it cost too much." "Explain." "Here's the thing about our species, Commander. We've been fighting each other for so long that we've gotten very, very good at it. We know every way to kill. We know every way to make killing expensive. And when someone new shows up and tries to kill us, we treat them like any other enemy." Vextal's crest tightened. "You consider us no different from your own enemies." "No, you're different, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're trying to take something from us, and we don't like that. What do you value that we could possibly take?" The human leaned forward. "Everything. Our homes, our families, our ability to wake up in the morning and choose what we want to do. We have this concept called freedom. You probably don't Understand it. Freedom to what? Freedom to make our own mistakes. Freedom to fail. Freedom to try again. Freedom to tell someone like you to get off our planet and never come back. Vextal studied him. You are not afraid. I'm terrified, but that doesn't matter. Being afraid never stopped me before. Then what stops you? The human was quiet for a moment, then. Nothing, that's the secret, Commander. There's nothing you can do that we haven't imagined. There's nothing you can threaten that we haven't already threatened ourselves with. We've faced our own extinction many times. We've faced everything you can throw at us. Then you will fight to the last. No, the human shook his head. We'll fight to the last, the last, the last. And then we'll keep fighting after that. Because that's who we are. We get back up. Vextal ordered the human taken back to containment. Then she turned to her officers. We need a different approach. They will not surrender. They will not negotiate. They will not be intimidated. Her tactical officer nodded. Commander, we have been analyzing human military doctrine. There's something you need to see. The display showed a human military exercise, soldiers moving through terrain, firing weapons, coordinating their movements. At first glance, this appears primitive, the officer said, but watch. The soldiers split into teams. They used cover. They provided suppressing fire. They advanced methodically. These are basic tactics. Every species develops them, but humans have something else. What? Adaptability. Watch the reaction when something goes wrong. On the display, a human soldier was separated from his unit. He was alone, surrounded by enemy forces in the exercise, and yet he continued fighting. He used terrain, improvised weapons, misdirection. He survived until his unit arrived. He should have been killed, Vextal said. He was isolated. He was outnumbered. He had no support. Correct, and yet he survived. Commander, these people have a psychological condition. They don't accept defeat. Even when defeat is inevitable, they refuse to acknowledge it. That is not a condition. That is stupidity. No, Commander, that is something far more dangerous. It is hope. Vextal sat back. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Hoping. She had seen hope before. It was the first thing she crushed in every conquered world. Hope was the enemy of subjugation. Hope meant resistance. Hope meant rebellion. But this was different. This hope had been tested. For millennia, humans had faced extinction-level threats, climate, disease, war, famine, and they had survived. Each survival only reinforced the hope. They didn't believe they could win because they had never lost. I need time, Vextal said. I need to understand them. I need to find their weakness. Her intelligence officer stepped forward. Commander, there is one more thing. Our analysis of human entertainment media has revealed something unusual. What? These people actually enjoy stories about their own destruction. They have thousands of films, books, and games about aliens invading Earth. In most of them, the humans win. That's propaganda. No, Commander, it's worse than propaganda. They are preparing themselves. They are running simulations. In their own minds, they have imagined every possible invasion scenario and planned for it. The display showed a human film, alien ships descending on a city, human soldiers fighting back against Impossible odds, the human soldiers won. Commander, the intelligence officer, said these people have been preparing for us their entire existence. They didn't know we were coming. They didn't know we were real, but they were ready anyway. Because they imagined us, Vextal whispered. They imagine our every move before we made it. No, Commander, they imagined something worse. They imagined a threat they couldn't defeat, and then they defeated it anyway. In their stories, every single time they find a way. Vextal stared at the display as the humans on screen celebrated their impossible victory. Commander, her tactical officer said, we need to consider the possibility that we cannot win. No, there is always a way. Every species has a limit. Every species has a breaking point. Commander, these people's breaking point is the point where they find something else to break. They don't have limits. They have reserves. Vextal sat in silence, her claws scraping against the armrest of her command throne. The humans weren't a species. They were a pandemic of hope, a disease of resilience, a plague of survival. And there was no cure. The interrogation chamber was designed to break minds. It was not a room of pain. The Empire had long since abandoned torture as inefficient. Instead, the chamber used pure psychological pressure. The walls shifted, the lighting changed, and the temperature fluctuated to create a sense of disorientation. The occupant could never be certain of their environment, their time, or their own sanity. It had never failed. Until now. The human Marine sat in the center of the chamber with his eyes closed. He had been there for 3 rotations. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He had been subjected to constant sensory assault. And he was humming. The human, her intelligence officer reported, has been offered the standard cessation agreement 13 times. He has refused each offer. Offer it again. Vexter watched through the observation window as the offer was transmitted. The human opened his eyes and listened. Then he chuckled. Let me get this straight, he said. You want me to tell you everything I know about human military capabilities, and in exchange, you'll let me go? Correct. Here's the thing, I'm a Marine. I don't know anything. I'm told where to go, what to shoot, and when to stop. That's my job. I don't know strategy. I don't know technology. I don't know politics. You know how to fight. That's not a secret. Anyone can learn to fight. It's just practice. Then what is your value? Why are you refusing to cooperate if you have nothing to offer? The human smiled. It was the same smile Vextal had seen before, the expression she still couldn't identify. Because I chose to, he said. That's what you don't understand. I'm not refusing because I have something to gain. I'm refusing because I chose this. You chose captivity. I chose to not give you anything, even if I had nothing to give. I chose to make you work for it. That's the human way. We don't give up just because it's easier. Vextal entered the chamber. She needed to see him. She needed to understand. You will tell us everything, she said. It is inevitable. Is it? Because you've had me for 3 days, and I haven't told you anything. You will break. Maybe, but that's not the point. The point is that even if I break, someone else will resist, and someone else after that, and someone else after that. You can break a human, but you can't break humanity. Vextal studied him. He was younger then. She had initially thought his eyes were weary, but they were not defeated. They were not even afraid. "What is your name?" she asked. The human looked at her for a long moment. "Rico, Sergeant Rico." "That is not your real name." "It's my name. It's the name my parents gave me. It's the name on my dog tags. It's my name. Why are you willing to die for this?" Rico leaned back in his chair. "That's a strange question for a soldier to answer. Most soldiers die for their country or their family or their beliefs. I'm willing to die for something smaller than that." "What?" "I'm willing to die for the guy next to me because he'd do the same for me. That's the thing about us, Commander. We don't fight for abstract concepts. We fight for each other." Vextal felt something shift in her understanding. The humans didn't fight because they were ordered to. They didn't fight because they were afraid. They fought because they chose to protect each other. "Let me tell you about my people," Rico continued. "We come from a world that tries to kill us every single day. Natural disasters, disease, predators. We've had to fight just to survive since the day we stood upright, and you know what we learned." "What?" "We learned that the only thing that matters is each other. Everything else is just stuff, but each other, that's the reason we keep going. And you would sacrifice yourself for one other person. I would sacrifice myself for the chance that someone else might live, and every human would do the same. That's what makes us dangerous. You can't defeat a species that values each other more than they value themselves." Vextal sat down across from him. She had never done this before. She had never sat with a prisoner and listened, but she needed to understand. "You speak of sacrifice," she said, "but you are still alive. You are still here. What makes you think you won't break?" Rico chuckled again. "Because I've been broken before and I'm still here." "What?" "I grew up in a place called Earth, not the nice parts. I grew up in the parts where people fight to survive every day. I've lost friends, I've lost family. I've lost everything more than once, and I'm still here." "You're not broken." "I'm always broken, but I keep moving. That's the secret, Commander. You don't have to be whole to fight. You don't have to be okay. You just have to keep moving." Vextal sat in silence for a long moment. "You are not what I expected," she finally said. "Nobody expects us. That's why we win." "I'm not sure you will win." Rico shrugged. "Maybe not, but we'll make you pay for every inch, and when you finally leave, we'll still be here. We'll rebuild, we'll start again, we'll do what we've always done, which is survive." Vextal left the interrogation chamber. She walked through the corridors of her flagship, past her officers, past her soldiers. She didn't see them. She was seeing something else. She was seeing a species that had been fighting for tens of thousands of years. A species that had faced extinction more times than she could count and had survived every time. A species that valued each other more than they valued their own survival. The humans weren't conquerors. They weren't warriors. They weren't even really soldiers. They were survivors. And survivors don't quit. "Commander," her tactical officer said, "we have new intelligence. The human soldiers are mobilizing." "What are they doing?" "They appear to be preparing for ground invasion. They are fortifying their cities. They are stockpiling weapons. They are training their civilian population. They intend to fight on their own soil. Yes, Commander, they intend to make every inch of their world a battle zone. Vextal felt something cold settle in her chest. The humans weren't just fighting to defend their world, they were fighting to make the Empire's victory hollow. They were fighting to make the cost too high. Commander, her intelligence officer, said, we have analyzed human civilian defense plans. They have prepared for every scenario. They have contingency plans for orbital bombardment, for ground invasion, for biological warfare, for everything. How could they prepare for everything? They didn't prepare for everything. They prepared for the worst possible scenario, and then they prepared for something worse, and then they prepared for something even worse. They have been running worst-case scenarios for their entire existence. Vextal stared at the display. The humans were digging in. They were not retreating. They were not surrendering. They were getting ready to make their world a graveyard. For the first time in her career, Vextal felt something she had never felt before. She was losing, and she didn't know how to stop it. The data had been analyzed, processed, scrutinized, and still Vextal could not make herself believe it. This can't be right, she said. Run it again. We have run it 17 times, Commander. The results are consistent. Vextal stared at the display. The data showed Earth's geological history, its climate patterns, its evolutionary record. It was impossible. It was incomprehensible. These are death world parameters, she said slowly. This world should not support complex life. It should not support civilization. It should be barely habitable. And yet, Commander, there are 9 billion humans living on it. The display showed the reality of Earth. An atmosphere with fatal radiation levels, a magnetosphere that fluctuated wildly, tectonic activity that would make any imperial geologist weep, extreme temperature variations, and a biosphere that was actively hostile to its own dominant species. This planet, Vextal said, is a prison. It's a death sentence. No, Commander, it's worse than that. This planet is a filter. The display shifted to show the human evolutionary timeline. Every stage of their development was marked by catastrophe, extinction events, climate shifts, mass die-offs, and every time the humans' ancestors had survived. There's more, the intelligence officer said. The humans' closest genetic relatives, other species that evolved on the same world, are aggressive, dangerous, and numerous. The humans had to compete with them for millions of years. They fought their own biosphere. They evolved inside it. Commander, these people developed intelligence not because it was useful, but because they needed it to survive. They are the product of a world that tried to kill them at every stage of their development. Vextal sat down heavily. She felt her claws scrape against her command throne. Her mind was struggling to process what she was seeing. The average human, the officer continued, survives on this world for approximately 80 rotations. During that time, they are exposed to diseases, predators, natural disasters, and threats from their own species. And yet, they live, they thrive, they build civilizations. How? We don't know. We only know that they have adapted to their environment in ways that don't make sense. Their bodies are designed to survive incredible trauma. Their immune systems are weapons. Their Psychology is built around hope and resilience. Vextal stood. I need to see it for myself. Prepare a surface expedition. I will go to Earth. Commander, that is not advisable. I said prepare an expedition. The descent was terrifying. Vextal had visited hundreds of worlds, but none of them were like this. The atmosphere was volatile, the gravity was crushing. The weather was unpredictable. And that was just the environment. When she stepped onto the surface, she felt it immediately. The air was heavy. The light was harsh. The sounds were a constant assault of life and death, playing out in every direction. This is the garden world, she asked. Incredulous, this is what they call paradise. Commander, this is one of their cities. Vextal looked around. The city was immense, sprawling, and filled with activity. Humans moved everywhere. They were working, playing, arguing, laughing. They were living on a death world. You see, a voice said. Vextal turned. A human was standing behind her. He was older than they soldiers she had seen, with gray hair and weathered features. You're the one they sent to see what we're really like, the human said. Who are you? Name's Thomas. I'm a historian. They thought you might need some context. Context in about Earth, about us. You've been looking at the data, right? You know what kind of planet this is. Vextal nodded slowly. This should not support life. Correct, but it does, and that's where you're getting confused. Confused how? Thomas walked to the edge of a building and looked out over the city. You're looking at the planet and thinking we survived despite it, but that's not right. We survived because of it. Explain. Everything we are, everything we've built, everything we've achieved, it's all because of this place. Disasters, the predators, the disease. They forced us to evolve. They forced us to become who we are. You became who you are because you had to survive. Exactly. We didn't develop intelligence because we were curious. We developed intelligence because we needed to figure out how to kill things that were trying to eat us. We didn't develop cooperation because we were nice. We developed cooperation because we needed to work together to survive. Vextal stared at the city, the buildings, the people, the chaos. You're the apex predator, she whispered. We don't like that term, but yes, we're the thing that eats everything else, including each other sometimes, but that's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is that you can't beat us. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we've been fighting since before we were human. Fighting is what we do, it's what we are. Vextal felt something cold settle in her. Just, you enjoy it. No, we don't enjoy it, but we're good at it and we don't stop. Thomas turned to face her. Let me ask you something. You've conquered hundreds of worlds. You've subjugated thousands of species, but have you ever faced a species that was ready to die just to make you lose? Vextal was silent. We are, Thomas continued. That's not a threat, that's a fact. If you invade, we will fight. If you bomb us, we will dig deeper. If you kill us, someone else will take our place. We will never, ever stop. Why? Because that's what we do. We survive. We always have. We always will. Vextal returned to her flagship in silence. The data had been confirmed. The truth had been revealed. The humans weren't conquerors. They weren't warriors. They weren't even survivors. They were something else entirely. They were the species that had stared into the abyss and found it wanting. They were the species that had faced extinction and decided to fight. They were the species that had turned their death world into a nursery and their enemies into stepping stones. They were the species that could not break, and Vextal had no idea how to stop them. The message arrived in the dead of the Imperial night cycle. Vextal had been awake for 5 rotations. She had not slept, had not eaten, had not rested. She had been staring at the data, trying to find a way to defeat the humans, a tactic they hadn't anticipated, a weakness they hadn't addressed. But there was none. The humans had prepared for everything. And now the message. Commander, her communications officer, said, "We have received a priority transmission from the Imperial Council." On screen, the council chamber appeared on her display. The Emperor sat at the head of the table, flanked by his advisors. Their expressions were grim. "Commander Vextal," the Emperor said, "your reports have caused considerable concern." "My Emperor, I am only reporting what I have found. Your report suggests that the human species is unconquerable, that any attempt at subjugation will result in unacceptable losses, that we should consider alternatives." Alternatives? Negotiation, withdrawal, reassessment of our expansion objectives. Vextal was silent for a moment, then, "My Emperor, I cannot recommend any of those. They would be interpreted as weakness. The humans would interpret our refusal to negotiate as aggression, and your report suggests that aggression against them would be costly. The humans do not negotiate, my Emperor. They do not surrender, they do not retreat, they." "We have read your report," the Emperor's voice was cold. "We have considered your findings, and we have decided that you are not objective. My Emperor, you have been compromised. You have come to fear the humans. That fear has clouded your judgment." Vextal felt something shift in her chest, not quite anger, not quite fear. Something else. "With respect, my Emperor, fear is not clouding my judgment. Fear is clarifying it. I have seen what these people are capable of. I have seen their resilience, their adaptability, their refusal to be defeated. I am telling you the truth. The truth is that you have failed. You were sent to subjugate a primitive world. You have not done so. Instead, you have brought back reports of invincibility." Vextal was silent. "Your failure will be noted," the Emperor continued. "The Imperial Council will take over this operation. We will send a delegation to the humans. We will offer them terms. Membership in the Empire, protectorate status. They will be allowed to keep their world, their culture, their autonomy. In exchange, they will acknowledge our sovereignty and pay tribute." "That won't work. They will refuse. Then we will destroy them." Vextal closed her eyes. "You don't understand. They will not accept terms. They will not be intimidated. They will not be destroyed." "Then what will they do?" "I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know what they'll do, but I know it won't be what we expect." The transmission ended. Vextal sat in silence for a long moment. Then she opened a channel to her intelligence officer. "We have a problem. The council is going to send a delegation. They think they can negotiate. They think the humans will accept terms." "And what do the humans think?" Vextal pulled up the latest intercepts. Earth's communication networks were ablaze with speculation. The humans were debating whether the Empire would offer takeout or included delivery with their membership terms. "We need to warn them," Vextal said. "We need to tell them what's coming." "Commander, that would be treason." "Treason is destroying your own civilization because you're too proud to admit you've met your match." Vextal opened a channel to Earth, to the diplomat. "Amara Chen Liu, we need to talk." The human diplomat appeared on her display. She looked tired, but she was smiling. "Commander, I was wondering when you'd call. The Empire is sending a delegation. They will offer you terms. Terms: protectorate status, autonomy in exchange for sovereignty, tribute. And what do you think about that?" Vextal was silent for a moment. "Then I think you will refuse." "Very likely, but why are you telling us this?" "Because I think the Empire is wrong. I think you can't be beaten. I think any attempt to beat you will destroy us, and I don't want my species to be destroyed." Amara studied her for a long moment. "You're afraid." "I'm terrified. For the first time in my life, I'm terrified." "Good, that's the right response." "What?" "The humans are not a threat to you because we're the strongest. We're a threat to you because we're the most stubborn. We'll break your civilization. Not because we're better, but because we're too dumb to know when to stop, and your empire isn't ready for that." "Then what do I do?" "Wait, watch, and when the delegation comes, remember this: we don't fight because we want to. We fight because we have to, and we always win." The transmission ended. VXQTAL sat in the silence of her command throne, listening to the hum of her flagship, the whispers of her crew, the distant rumble of a civilization about to make the worst mistake in its history. She had told them. She had warned them. And now she could only watch as the Empire walked into the trap that humanity had been building for 10,000 years. The delegation arrived with full ceremony. 6 ships, their hulls gleaming with the symbols of the Imperial Council. They descended through Earth's atmosphere with the weight of an empire behind them. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to dictate. VXQTAL watched from her flagship, her heart heavy. The human delegation met them at a neutral location, a conference center, built specifically for this purpose. The Imperials arrived in their ceremonial robes, their crests raised in formal greeting. The humans arrived in business attire. "This is not a negotiation," the Imperial envoy said. "This is an offer of mercy. You will accept our terms or you will face our wrath." The human lead negotiator was a woman named Priya. She was small, calm, and utterly unimpressed. "Let's hear your terms," she said. "The Empire will allow Earth to exist as a protectorate. You will have autonomy in your internal affairs. You will maintain your cultural identity. You will be protected from external threats. In exchange, you will acknowledge imperial sovereignty and pay tribute. Tribute. Resources, technology, labor. We will determine the specifics." Priya nodded. "And if we refuse, then we will destroy you." "Destroy us how?" The envoy paused. "We will use our most powerful weapons. We will reduce your cities to rubble. We will kill everyone who resists. We will erase your species from existence." Priya looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. I'm sorry, she said. I don't mean to be rude, but that's not going to happen. You doubt our power. I doubt your willingness to use it. You've had your fleet over our planet. For weeks, you've threatened us multiple times. You've done nothing, and now you're here offering us a deal. That's not the action of a civilization. That's confident in its victory. That's the action of a civilization that's trying to avoid a fight it knows it will lose. The envoy's crest flattened. We are trying to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. No, you're trying to avoid looking weak, and you're afraid that if you fight us, you'll be exposed, and you're right. The envoy stood. You have made your choice. We will return to our fleet. We will prepare for war, and when we return, we will not offer terms. Before you go, Priya said, let me tell you something. What? We're not afraid of you. We've never been afraid of you. We've been afraid of ourselves, of our own capacity for destruction, of our own ability to tear ourselves apart. But you're nothing. You're just another bully, and bullies always lose. The envoy stared at her, then he turned and left. Priya remained seated. She watched the Imperials depart, and when they were gone, she opened a channel to Earth. Well, she said, that went as expected. Back on the Imperial flagship, Vex Tau watched the human response spread across her displays. The humans were not panicking. They were not mobilizing. They were not even concerned. They were waiting. And Vex Tau knew why. The Empire had been watching them. The Empire had been analyzing them. The Empire had been trying to find their weakness. And in doing so, the Empire had missed the most important thing. The humans weren't just surviving. They were growing. They were learning. They were adapting. And now they had a new toy to play with. Commander, her tactical officer said, the human military forces are moving. Mobilizing. No, they appear to be repositioning. They are moving their assets to cover every possible approach. They are not attacking. They are making it clear that any attack will cost more than we're willing to pay. Show me. The display showed human troop movements, defensive positions, tactical deployments. It was a masterwork of defensive planning. Every approach covered, every vulnerability protected, every possible attack anticipated. The humans are not just defending, Vex Tau said, they are demonstrating. Demonstrating what? That they know how to fight, that they've always known, and that the only reason we're still alive is because they've chosen to let us be. The Imperial Council strategy was based on outdated assumptions. They thought the humans were weaker. They thought the humans were divided. They thought the humans would eventually break. But they were wrong. The humans had been fighting since before they were human. They had been surviving on a death world for 1,000,000 years. They had been preparing for this moment longer than the Empire had existed. And now the moment had come. We need to withdraw, Vexcalthiel said. Commander, we need to withdraw from the system. We need to reassess. We need to. Commander, that would be interpreted as cowardice. It would be interpreted as survival, and right now, survival is all we should be thinking about. But Vexcalthiel knew it was too late. The Imperial Council would not withdraw. They would not reassess. They would not admit they had made a mistake. They would attack, and they would lose. Commander, her tactical officer said, the Imperial fleet is preparing for Orbital bombardment. They intend to destroy a human city as a demonstration. Which city? New York. They believe it will break human morale. Excalibur closed her eyes. Commander, the humans are responding. They are launching small vessels. They are positioning them between the fleet and the city. What? Commander, they are using human shields. They are placing themselves in the path of the attack. Excalibur stared at the display. Hundreds of human vessels, civilian vessels, military vessels, everything they had were moving to intercept the Imperial fleet. They were not firing. They were not attacking. They were blocking. Commander, the fleet is demanding that the humans move. The humans are refusing. Contact the fleet. Tell them to hold fire. Commander, the fleet has been ordered to proceed. Contact the fleet. Tell them that if they fire on those vessels, they will be committing a war crime. We cannot. The fleet has cut communications. Excalibur watched in horror as the Imperial ships continued their approach. The human vessels were positioned perfectly. They were blocking every angle. They were making it impossible to attack without killing them. Commander, her tactical officer said, the humans are broadcasting on all channels. What are they saying? They are saying that if the Empire fires on them, they will not surrender. They will not retreat. They will fight to the last. Excalibur felt her claws dig into her armrest. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreading. The moment the humans proved that they were willing to do what the Empire couldn't. The moment the Empire realized it had made the worst mistake in its history. Commander, her tactical officer said, the fleet is firing. The Empire fired. The blast was immense. It was designed to be a demonstration, a warning, a show of force. It would crack the human city. Like an egg, it would kill millions. It would make the humans understand the cost of resistance. But it hit the human shields first. The human vessels absorbed the blast. They didn't survive. They were vaporized in an instant, but they absorbed enough of the blast that the city below was only partially damaged. They had sacrificed themselves to save others, and the Empire had helped. The Empire had fired the shot that killed the human vessels. The Empire had committed a war crime. The Empire had shown the galaxy that it was willing to kill civilians. And now the Empire would pay. Commander, her tactical officer said, the humans are responding. What are they doing? They're not attacking. They're broadcasting. They're showing the galaxy what we did. Excalibur stared at the display. The humans had recorded everything, every angle, every detail. The Empire's attack on civilian vessels, the Empire's willingness to kill non-combatants, the Empire's cruelty. The footage was spreading across every Imperial world. It was spreading across every neutral world. It was spreading like wildfire. The Empire was being exposed. Commander, we are receiving reports of unrest on multiple Imperial worlds. People are questioning the Council's decisions. They are demanding answers. This is a disaster. It's worse than a disaster. Empire's legitimacy is based on the belief that we are just, that we are fair, that we protect our citizens, and now the galaxy had seen the truth. The Empire wasn't just a conqueror, it was a bully, and bullies always lose. Commander, the human forces are moving They are not attacking us, they are deploying. Deploying where? They are sending ships to Imperial worlds, not to attack, to offer aid. Vextal stared at the display in disbelief. To offer aid. The humans are using the footage of our attack to rally support. They are showing that we are the aggressors. They are showing that we are the bullies, and they are offering to help anyone who wants to leave the Empire. This is psychological warfare. No, Commander, this is something worse. This is the truth, and the truth is that the Empire has failed. Vextal watched the events unfold. On Imperial worlds, protests erupted. On neutral worlds, governments condemned the attack. On Earth, the humans celebrated their victory without firing a single shot, and the Empire collapsed. Commander, her tactical officer said, we have received a transmission from the Imperial Council. They are requesting a ceasefire. A ceasefire. They are offering to withdraw from Earth. They are offering to end the blockade. They are offering to apologize. Vextal was silent for a long moment. Then she opened a channel to the human diplomat. Amara Chen Liu, the Empire is requesting a ceasefire. Are they now? They are offering to withdraw, to end the blockade, to apologize. And what do you want from me? I want to know what you'll do. Will you accept the ceasefire? Amara was quiet for a moment, then she smiled. It was the same smile Vextal had seen before, the expression she still couldn't identify. We'll accept, she said, but on our terms. What terms? The Empire must officially recognize our sovereignty. It must acknowledge that it attacks civilian vessels. It must accept responsibility for its actions. That's all. That's all. We don't want revenge. We don't want destruction. We just want to be left alone. Vextal felt something shift in her. Just relief, gratitude, something else she couldn't identify. Thank you, she said. Don't thank us, thank yourselves. You chose to stop fighting. You chose to admit defeat, and that's the hardest thing any species can do. The transmission ended. Vextal sat in the silence of her command throne, listening to the hum of her flagship, the whispers of her crew, the distant rumble of an empire that had just been defeated. Not by weapons, not by war, not by force, but by hope, by resilience, by humanity's refusal to be afraid. The Empire had never understood the humans. It had never understood that they were fighting with something the Empire couldn't comprehend. They were fighting with themselves, with their own demons, with their own fears. And they were winning because they knew something the Empire didn't. They knew that the only thing worth fighting for was each other. And now the Empire knew it too. The humans had come, they had seen, they had conquered, and they had found nothing to fear. Epilogue. Years later, Vextal visited Earth again. She walked through the cities, the farms, the forests. She saw the humans living their lives, building their civilization, fighting their own battles. They had not changed. They were still resilient, still adaptable, still refusing to be beaten. And Vextal found herself respecting them, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they had shown her something the Empire had forgotten. That strength wasn't about weapons. It wasn't about fear. It wasn't about submission. It was about hope. And hope was the only thing the Empire had never been able to conquer. "Welcome back, Commander," a voice said. Vextal turned. Amara Chen Liu was standing behind her, older, grayer, but still smiling. "Thank you," Vextal said. "Thank you for coming, for seeing us, for understanding. I had to see it for myself. I had to know that you weren't just the thing I was afraid of." "And what are we?" Vextal was silent for a moment, then, "You are the reason we fight, the reason we survive, the reason we keep going." Amara smiled. "That's the best thing anyone's ever said about us, but we're not special. We're just people, people who refuse to give up, people who refuse to be afraid, people who know that the only thing that matters is each other." Vextal nodded. "That's enough," she said. "That's more than enough." And it was, because the humans had shown the Empire something it had forgotten, that the most powerful weapon in the universe wasn't a weapon at all. It was hope, and the humans had it in abundance. The end.